ISIS terrorists.
These ISIS terrorists.
ISIS terrorists.
ISIS, or Islamic State, is an extremist Islamist militant organization with complicated origins. And dealing with them is also complicated. They want to create a caliphate based on an extreme form of Sharia law and bring about the apocalypse. President Barack Obama described dealing with them best. It's a
quagmire.
Just who is Islamic State and how did they form? We put together a timeline to answer these questions. And after watching it, you should have a better understanding of how we find ourselves in this
quagmire.
Shortly after the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was born in Samarra, Iraq in 1971, and whose real name is Ibrahim Awad Ibrahim al-Badri, helped set up an insurgent group to fight coalition troops. And a year later, in February 2004, Baghdadi is arrested and sent to the US-run Camp Bucca, where he meets former Ba'athist military commanders and religious extremists. Camp Bucca has been described as a pressure cooker for extremism. And Baghdadi is released after 10 months for good behavior. But in 2006, he joins a group of Sunni insurgents led by al-Qaeda, and specifically this guy, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. The group announces the formation of the Islamic State of Iraq. 4 years later, Baghdadi becomes the group's leader. And then a couple years after that, they announce a name change to the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, and becomes known as ISIL, or ISIS to most of the world, and Daesh in Arabic. The group advances westward from Iraq into war-torn Syria and seizes oil wells to fund its war chest. A year later, in January of 2014, Baghdadi's militants take full control of the Syrian city of Raqqa, which becomes their de facto capital. Here they are, making themselves at home, burning a large pile of cigarettes. Led by Ba'athist commanders, its fighters move across northern Iraq as the Iraqi army collapses, capturing Mosul and other cities to set up its territory on land straddling the Iraqi-Syrian border. A month later, in February, al-Qaeda formally ends its affiliation with the group. Jon Stewart says it best.
An al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria is so extreme, al-Qaeda's like,
Reports emerge detailing Baghdadi's harsh form of rule. Executions, even among its own ranks, become common. Up until this point, there were only 2 images of Baghdadi. But in June 2014, Baghdadi reveals himself and proclaims himself caliph, a successor to the Muslim prophet Muhammad selected by God. And their group is now a caliphate, an Islamic government ruled by the caliph. He calls on Muslims to help build an empire, and the group changes its name again, shortening it to Islamic State. Over the next month, the U.S. launches about 150 airstrikes against Islamic State militants in Iraq. And then August 19, 2014, in retaliation, British-born Islamic State fighter Mohammed Emwazi, known as Jihadi John, appears in a video beheading American journalist James Foley.
So any attempt by you, Obama?
The group's slick propaganda campaign aimed at inspiring both fear and admiration is in full swing. A couple of weeks after that,
I'm back, Obama.
Jihadi John beheads another U.S. hostage, Stephen Sotloff, also on video. And then, a few days after that,
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak to you about what the United States will do with our friends and allies to degrade and ultimately destroy the terrorist group known as ISIL.
The Obama administration announces the formation of a coalition to bomb the Islamic State.
This is a core principle of my presidency. If you threaten America, you will find no safe haven.
Airstrikes start across Syria on September 23rd. More countries joined the coalition, fighting the Islamic State. In November of 2014, in an audio tape, Baghdadi urges his followers to erupt volcanoes of jihad everywhere. and his followers appear to be listening. The Paris-based magazine, Charlie Hebdo, has produced many satirical covers over the years. Some of them depict the Prophet Muhammad, and, because of this, on January 7th, 2015, the magazine headquarters was attacked, killing 12 people. A few days later, 2 gunmen kill 4 people at a kosher grocery store. Al-Qaeda in Yemen claims responsibility for the magazine assault, but the militant who attacked the store, this guy, appears in a posthumous video declaring allegiance to Islamic State, signaling a cooperation between Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State on a grassroots level, despite rifts between their leaders. About a month later, on February 3rd, 2015, Islamic State broadcast video shows Lieutenant Muhad Safi al-Qasasba, a Jordanian pilot, being burnt alive in a cage, in a dramatically shot sequence with touches of fake fire, like the one covering the screen right here. The video shows the Islamic State understands the manipulative power of the imagery they send out to the news. And then a month after that, militant group Boko Haram pledges allegiance to Baghdadi. A couple weeks later, Iraq forces backed by US-led warplanes retake Tikrit, their first major battlefield success. But then, about 2 months later, Ramadi, capital of Iraq's western Anbar province, falls to Islamic State, highlighting the ebb and flow of the war. Not to mention, this and all the other fighting in this entire area has fueled the biggest refugee crisis since World War II. And then on May 20th, 2015, Islamic State captures Palmyra, home to Syrian army installations. They also destroy the ancient monuments and film mass executions at the city's Roman amphitheater. A month later, in Tunisia, the group claims responsibility for the killing of 38 people at a beach resort that devastates Tunisia's crucial tourism sector. A couple months later, in September, as Islamic State seeks to profit from the chaos in Yemen, its fighters carry out one of the biggest suicide bombings in the country and strike a Shiite mosque in Sana'a during Eid prayers, killing 30 people. And then September 30th, 2015, Russia enters the Syrian civil war to back President Bashar al-Assad against rebel groups supported by Western powers, as well as the Islamic State. A few weeks later, on October 11th, 2 suicide bombers kill more than 100 people in Ankara, Turkey. The government blames Islamic State for the worst attack of its kind on Turkish soil. And then on October 31st, 2015, a Russian passenger jet crashes in the Sinai Desert in Egypt, killing all 224 people on board in an attack claimed by the Islamic State's affiliate in Egypt. 2 weeks later, Islamic State claims twin bombs that killed at least 44 people in its first attack in Beirut, Lebanon, targeting a stronghold of the militant Hezbollah group that has been supporting Assad. The next day, Kurdish forces drive Islamic State fighters from the northern town of Sinjar, a significant advance in a campaign to regain territory seized by the militant group. The U.S. says it's reasonably certain it killed Jihadi John in an airstrike. Remember, this guy.
I'm back, Obama.
And then that very same day, Islamic State fighters simultaneously attack 5 locations in Paris, killing at least 130 people. The French president, François Hollande, calls it an act of war.
C'est un acte de guerre.
And then France starts bombing Islamic State strongholds in Syria in retaliation. The US-led coalition against Islamic State dropped a record number of bombs in November, doubling the amount they dropped in June. Meanwhile, in Libya, Islamic State makes gains and raises its black flags over Sirte, on the shores of the Mediterranean. Sirte becomes the first city Islamic State governs outside of Syria and Iraq. And then back in the United States during a holiday party, at a facility that assists individuals with developmental disabilities, 2 shooters, a husband and wife, kill 14 people. Evidence emerges that they strongly support Islamic State and had become self-radicalized.
The 2 of them had gone down the dark path of radicalization, embracing a perverted interpretation of Islam that calls for war against America and the West. As the internet erases the distance between countries, we see growing efforts by terrorists to poison the minds of people like the Boston Marathon bombers and the San Bernardino killers.
In a radio broadcast, ISIS praises the act, despite not having any contact with the couple whatsoever. And so this whole situation continues to be a
quagmire.